here, getting that going. But welcome everyone. I think we're waiting for, like I said, just a couple of other people to join us. But as we're gathering here, we're just kind of touching base and just wanted to see how everybody's doing today.
Good. I'll just jump in there and say good. It's a beautiful day here. I hope it's beautiful everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty nice here in Helena today.
Yes, Kalispell's beautiful sunny day today, mid-70s.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, surprisingly this late in the year, but we'll take it.
For sure. Yeah, we were talking how last year, like a year ago, we had already had snow by this time. And 2 years ago, I had snow before the snowplow people could even get their contracts sent out. So it was a lot snowier past years. This has been a good year.
Absolutely.
Miranda, I'm curious what the weather is in your neck of the woods.
It's nice and sunny, but it's mid-40s, so a little bit chilly. Could you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just made me
Carmen,
think had to go over to Baker next Friday, so I'm hoping the weather holds out for the end of next week because I was hoping it'd be good.
Our first freeze is supposed to be, I think, tonight or tomorrow night.
Ooh, okay. Well, all right.
26 is the predicted low.
So Carmen's got construction going on at the library.
let's see. Pam, I'm going to make you a co-host too.
Thank you.
And I guess Carmen, I made you a co-host too. I was clicking and clicked quickly. I was all excited about your construction. I heard a little bit from your colleagues when we were at the fall retreat this weekend, and hopefully all of that goes smoothly and quickly without too much disruption.
Yeah, it just got really loud though right before the meeting started, like right somewhere where there shouldn't be doing anything. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna close my door. I'm hoping for the best. And Pam knows this area, but the computer services office is now no longer. So
oh really? Oh.
Yep.
Oh well.
I know.
Excitement all around, all these changes and exciting expansions. I still can't believe that Bozeman Public Library is 16 years old. I just can't. It just seems like it was maybe last year that we were all, jumping up and down and being so excited about being in that new building.
It's still the new librry. I know we talk about the new library.
Right. Yeah. People still, they come in and go, the new library. And I'm like, well, it's not that new.
No.
It's fine. It's great, but it's not that new.
No, because by the time the former library got to this age, we were already looking at building a new one. I think it was like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I forget what the dates all were, but it was like, wow, that one, it only lasted about 20 years before we had to get in, make a new one. We really grew. So anyway, but I will get to see the new Public Service Safety Center tonight, because the meeting that they want to have for the state library to talk about, or the government affairs committee to talk about asking for funding. They can't have it at the library, of course, because you're in construction. So they have it at the Public Service Center, which is a new building that I haven't seen yet. Or the Public Safety Center, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's right. And it's fabulous. I got to tour it. Yeah, before it wasn't quite all the way ready yet. It was still, I don't know, 20% under construction at the time.
I'm looking forward to it.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, Robin has joined us. I think we'll go ahead and get started. As I said, I've got the recording started, and I'll get that posted, probably not at the end of the day today, but by Tuesday, end of day Tuesday. Us state library folks have Monday off for the Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day holiday. So some of the finishing touches and wrap up from our meeting today will happen early next week, certainly by the end of the day, Wednesday at the latest. So Robin, no worries, we are just convening here. So I hope that I'm going to kind of move through some of these introductory slides rather quickly and go to our agenda to have us return a little bit to the goals discussion that we started last week. We want to start looking at information related to the library administration track. I don't know that we'll see if we have any public comment by the end of our meeting, and then next steps. Our real objectives are to begin to think about the topics and changes for the library administration requirements. That is the required track for directors. And then to really think about other data or feedback or questions that you might have for us as we kind of continue this discussion. And so another reason that I probably won't get all of our next step and next meeting materials together is that meeting doesn't happen until Monday, the 17th, just in looking at calendars and availability and things like that. I think our next couple of meetings are not on Thursday, but we can revisit the schedule when we get to the end of our agenda today too. So that's what we're going to do and where we want to go this time. I did add to our meeting norms that we would raise our hands and use the chat to comment and ask questions. I don't know if there were any other additions to the meeting norms that you thought of, but that's what we have so far. And certainly, rules are there to help us get started, but as we become more comfortable and our discussions, range, please just feel free to speak up as you need to. The hand raising is helpful, but just jump right in. We have our charge to the task force, and so we're really looking into the requirements for library administration in particular, and that relates to public library standards, especially as directors must be certified by the state program. And with that, I am going to just jump in and we can start our discussion around what we talked about last week with goals, our criteria around having them be few, clear, actionable, and measurable. And as I looked back at our notes and as I was putting together the feedback summary that I sent to you last week, I think two things stood out. And Carmen, too, thank you for your message this week too. I think two themes or two topics for goals really stood out. And that was actually the verb promote continuing education, and then promote recognition. And with those two ideas, and specifically recognition, when I was at the Library Association fall retreat this past weekend, and did a session with a small group talking about certification. And we did have a really good kind of wide-ranging discussion about recognition and how recognition and the certification program could have some more specifics and more resources to help support the idea that that certification should promote engagement with professional learning, encouraging staff to continue to learn, as well as potentially recruitment and retention of highly qualified professional staff within libraries. So that's why you see these two items in this draft slide about goals. So I just wanted to stop there and see if you had any further thoughts or refinements or just general discussion on our goals so far.
Colette, with regard to the goals of this CE program, I find that sometimes, it's if we don't structure it so that somebody feels like they can come away with a skill at the end of doing the category, other than just kind of a diffuse exposure, that then it's some people would consider it busy work, versus somebody feeling good, and if we can help them with categorizations, that would give them, when you finish these 5 CEs, you should feel comfortable doing X, or be able to explain this to your colleagues, associates, whatever, in a knowledgeable fashion. And I don't know how that plays into this, but if we can structure it a little better to focus on that, I think it might be a value to let people feel like they've learned something in a specific area instead of just general knowledge.
That seems to be something I noticed reading through the survey responses too. There was a lot of people that said either, more meaningful training to their portion of the job instead of broad overall portions. Like, if somebody's just cataloging, why do they need to know about other stuff? So yeah, it's something maybe more relevancy, I guess.
I think I might go forward into some of the data slides, and then we can take a closer look at that feedback summary, because I think well, let me just even go this further. That's far. I really feel like in the feedback that we have, there is this tension, and I think it speaks to what you've said, Miranda and David, is that there's a call to make things more simple or clear, and that kind of pushes against some of the more difficult or complex ways to make things more flexible and open. But then we also have this other tension, or these things pushing against each other in, how meaningful is the outcome or the training path that somebody takes, as opposed to just meeting requirements, checking a box, and maybe having requirements lead to less meaningful engagement with learning. I used and I wanted to include this kind of quadrant-based look at these tensions that we have. They come from something called Eisenhower Squares that go right back to the former President Eisenhower, and there are different versions of this kind of decision-making or prioritization matrix. But it's something that I just wanted to have in the background as we think about different ideas, and even look at some of the specific feedback. If something is meaningful and easy or simple, that might be the ultimate goal for either promoting recognition or promoting continuing education for individual people. And so that might be like the most desirable quadrant to be looking towards in terms of decision making. I think definitely we need to really take to heart that feedback around having the requirements and how you get those requirements be more meaningful, and easy to access, as opposed to very difficult to access or figure out even what the path forward would be. Let's see here. I did want to kind of just share these things and see if you had any question about this. Just I always look across other state requirements, and I think I mentioned maybe mentioned this last time that I'd done a quick poll of the other states and their certification programs, and of the about half of the states responded, and many of them don't have requirements for certification. They may have in the past, but as it stands right now, certification falls either to a library association, or librarians in public libraries are required to have a professional degree, a master in library science or a master in library and information science. So just for some context, and I listed out the states that do have certification requirements and those that don't. The other just kind of general feedback too, is it kind of uses those scales because it asks people to prioritize the responses. And what we see is, I don't know, I will ask you what questions you have about these charts, and maybe that will help give me some more insight into what these might be saying. So the low and moderate prioritization is on the left in the bright red and orange color, and then the high or no opinion fell on the other side in the blue colors.
Can I ask a question about the slide prior, please?
Yes.
So, so the first slide says that the blue is yes, right? So less than half require or have a state certification requirement. Do I see that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and then the next question, is certification required for public library directors? So then a large part is required. So is that strange to everybody too, or not? Like not even half require that, but then it's required for public library directors? Or am I just seeing that wrong? I don't know. It just seems strange to me.
Yeah, it was part of the way that I asked the question. So 11 states of the 26 that responded. So we only have half of the states that responded.
Mhm.
So 11 of 26 states require certification. And of those 11, 10 require it for public library directors. And the response that says no is the state of Washington, because they require all library staff to have certification through the state of Washington. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, so then what you're saying on the first part where the 15 did not answer, but that was counted as a no?
They had to respond either yes or no. So if the no means no, we do not have certification requirements.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting mixture. I was surprised, and again, this is only about half of the states that responded. But really, that certification wasn't something that every state just does in the way that we do through the state library in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So these were definitely, more general, I guess, aspects to looking at the certification and continuing education programs. And with the changing of library administration track requirements being, I guess I'm really surprised at how many said low to moderate priority. And then this mix with high, which is the lighter blue color, and no opinion. So like I said, I'm not quite sure if this is helpful information. And that's where my question comes with, what other question or data might be helpful to know or have in front of us, especially when it comes to the library administration track requirements. Yeah.
I have to confess that I find this type of charting confusing. I don't feel like I glean that much from it. I don't know if a better way would be to keep those same questions, but have them rank them in their most significant. I just have trouble conceptualizing in my mind the way that comes out.
Yes.
And so I don't know how to interpret it very well.
I'm kind of having the same reaction. Are others too? I don't want to spend too much time on this if it's just not the right way to kind of look at how important it is, or what's the specific changes around administration we should be looking at.
I always have a hard time with these kind of displays too, because I can't really figure out what does that mean. But I do think the first one about keeping that personalized professional development plan that's a big high priority bunch there. People seem to want to keep that plan, and maybe more related to the administrator's side, where they can pick things that are more relevant than just those other categories that we have. But I thought that was an interesting one, that keeping that personalized track that not everybody might even be familiar with, how that particular aspect of it. But I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I do have a hard time with these kind of graphs or displays.
I agree with everyone else that I also have a hard time with this, but I think what made this most difficult is we're just saying change it, but we're not giving any indication of how it should be changed. And I think that's what makes these difficult. You know, let's change it, but how I don't know how to answer that, because I don't know how you're thinking about changing it. And I know that's what we're after here, but a lot of people will be like, well, I don't know. So I think that's why we get so many no opinions and just some odd answers, or odd's not the right word. I'm sorry. As you can see in my office, I am overwhelmed right now. So my brain is not functioning.
No, you are doing great, Jennifer. And it's great to see you again so soon. We had a really, really wonderful time at Chico learning this last weekend. There were so many great sessions. So it's really nice to see some of you there. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that maybe we need to move away from this slide in particular. And what I want to say too is that I don't want to waste time looking at something that isn't going to help us further our discussion. So these next two slides are just purely informational, and we're actually going to have a continuing education statistical dashboard available on the MSL website here in the next week or so, that will give some different pictures and deeper dives into certification completion and that over the last couple of years. But what these show is, kind of a trend of participation. It's not surprising that people are not really active in finishing certification in November, December. Those are typically slow months. We have other things that are on our minds and taking our time and priority between work and life and that. But we do see, as we get closer to and kind of through the springtime and into the beginning of the next fiscal year, more people are prompting, especially those administrators or the school or the library directors, in finishing up certifications that might be expiring. And then so far, let's see here, year to date, I didn't do a comparison side by side, but we had a big spike in July. And I'm attributing that to a little bit more outreach about certification and starting the continuing ed newsletter, which I hope all of you got today when I sent that earlier this morning. And then, between trustees and administrators, library directors, a few more in August. And then I'm really encouraged and excited by the number of staff who were completing certifications, especially in September. We did some work to remind folks in August as we were getting ready for the tri-conference that happened in Missoula. And so I think in terms of promoting certification and just sharing things that people can take advantage of, clarifying directions on how to claim credits, and that is going to go a long way towards promoting continuing education. So let's, with your permission, and unless there are other burning questions, I'm trying to move things around so I can see everybody's faces again. But one of the things that I think we touched on a little bit, and they had kind of a lively staff discussion too around what are those professional standards and what either defines excellence, or what is that foundation that you build on, so that I think, in one way, we define what is expected of our professionals, and then by doing that, we help our patrons, our public, understand what they can expect from the services that are delivered by those professionals. And I thought this was just kind of an interesting quote that, every job that we do is a representation of ourselves. And so we want to do the best job that we can. And we certainly want to strive for excellence, especially in public service. But what this kind of spoke to me about was, what is excellence, and how do we, build from the baseline of what everyone needs to know, so that communities have the opportunity to have the services that they need at the level that they need them to be. We talked a little bit about this, and I just, invite you to think about, is a particular requirement easy and meaningful, or does it fall into that difficult or complex and not meaningful area? And hopefully that's just a little bit of a way to kind of frame thinking about some of the recommendations or ideas that we have in the summaries. Let's see here. Pam, maybe you know how to do this, but I don't know how to turn my desk phone off on my computer, and it keeps ringing through. Sorry about that.
I don't have that set up, so I don't know how to turn that off.
It's funny. I will go like literally 10 days with nobody calling. And today I have had very many phone calls, many more than usual. So my apologies. So, with that in mind, this is our baseline. This is our definition of kind of the level of excellence, or what we expect library directors and anyone pursuing the library administration track to do. So over the course of a year, or over a 4-year period, have a chance to earn 60 continuing education credits, 20 of which are in library administration, and then the rest are basically electives, and then the category requirements. And so with the worksheet that I sent, I posed a couple of other questions too, about the sufficiency of, or the number of credits and the duration of time that you have to complete them. And really, the big question too is, are these the right amount of credits, or are there other ideas about what is required for library directors. And again, thinking about easy, meaningful, or, really hard and not meaningful. So I'm going to be quiet, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
As I was going through some of those lists and things, or comments even, a lot of the things that I thought of was, I feel like some of this should be different for larger libraries and smaller libraries, because directors at a larger library are doing a little bit different things than directors at a small library, where it might just be 1 or 2 people. They're not managing huge staffs. And they're doing more of the actual hands-on, like possibly collection development and programming things. But directors at a large library are doing more, even, management, and not so much HR, but still they're doing different. They're not doing the collection development. They're probably not even doing programming. I mean, so I think it might be meaningful to have different requirements, maybe, or different categories, different something for larger and smaller.
The other thing I was thinking, was that an echo, or was somebody else talking?
Go.
The other thing I was thinking of was instead of having to go into all 3 other categories as well, if they could just have their electives into whatever is more meaningful to their job.
Just as a general concept, just as they've done for the trustees and having us do a certain number every year, should we be having a minimum per year? I mean, I know from my colleagues in the past, it's when we had to be re-upped, it'd be a flurry of activity without much retention in the last month before you get your 100 credits every 5 years or whatever it is, and people are scrambling and calling each other, where do I get this? And without much thought regarding what was valuable to them other than to satisfy the CE requirements. I just throw it out there as a thought. I don't, I defer to the directors and staff as far as that, but I think it's a good idea for the trustees to have to do at least a minimum every year, instead of a cram at the end of 4.
David, can you say again where this example was from? I don't think I caught that. Was it a library example or no?
No, it was for a healthcare example. But the concept is the same about having a required number of courses and then having a certain period of time. And I plead guilty myself at times to not having paid much attention to it until the last 2 weeks, and then just have to jam it to get my requirements in, and so that I do become certified again. And I think it would be a better strategy, as it is now implemented under the trustee track, to do a certain number every year in Montana. Not the whole bunch, but at least for us, it's at least 3 a year. So I don't know if that's of value to others, but I think it's a good strategy for the trustees.
I mean, would that be, are you talking about that would be required, like instead of saying, you do your 10 or whatever in the 4-year period, is that a 4-year period too for the trustees? I don't remember.
The 4-year period for 15, yes.
Oh, 15, sorry. So you would require 3 per year, or instead of leaving it up to them? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking what.
Yeah. Well, the new standard has us doing 3 a year. I didn't participate in how that was decided, but that's what's come out. And I'm just wondering if it's, I don't mean to make it punitive, but it also, by making you do some every year, you don't end up with, 53 credits you need in the last 2 months of your 4th year. People get busy. I just throw it out. I don't feel that strongly about it, but I have seen them be less valuable than having it spread out over time when you can actually think about what you want to do for the credits that you need.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I've had this library administrator track for, I don't know, quite a few years. And I try to pace myself, right? I'm not doing 60 in year 4, obviously. So I don't know. So maybe that's just me, but I kind of, I do that automatically. I don't know. I mean, nobody's ever told me like, hey, you're, like you're short for the year or something. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about a certain, I mean, I understand the thought behind it, but what if somebody is like incredibly busy with construction for 1 year and doesn't have any time to, do any CE, but then the next year they have ample time. I don't know. I mean, I think that's why there is a time frame of 4 years. So you have ample time to finish the requirements, but I don't know. I guess I can pace myself well enough. So.
Well, I just find it interesting only in the sense that somebody obviously felt that we needed to do 3 every year instead of pacing ourselves. That's why I'm just curious what their rationale for doing that was.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I
Yeah.
find it a burden, but.
And Pam, I don't have any background on I just wasn't involved with the development of the public library standards. I don't know if you have any insights on the 3 hours per year.
I think the thought process behind that was that, well, trustees tend to go on and off the board. So having every year, a requirement every year would mean that even if you have a new trustee, they hopefully would get some new training that they might find beneficial, instead of as an individual, because this is not individuals, this is the board receives training in the standards. So it was hoping that the board every year would get some training. So even as you have new members, they're still getting training. I think that's the thought process there. It's not an individual thing like we're talking here, individuals. The standards are talking about the board as a whole.
I definitely
Robin?
see.
And I saw Robin had her hand up. So.
Oh, sorry, Robin. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say for OPI, I, as a past teacher, or I still am a teacher, but not teaching, but I am certified. We had 5 years to get 60 credit hours in. But the great thing was now OPI has where when you go to a class, you sign in and then they enter everything online. So you can go to the OPI website and see exactly how many credits you have and how many credits you need. And they don't send out a reminder or anything, but they keep track of them, and you can get access to how many credits you need all the time, which is really nice. But I'm not sure if you could do that with the library for continuing ed, or
Yeah, we actually do. Aspen is the system
Aspen
that
does.
tracks for
Great.
you.
There you go.
And I think I'm glad you brought up, and that's why I included the chart with kind of comparisons of other professional certification requirements.
Right.
That's on the last page of the one of the handouts or attachments. But it was about 5 or 6 years ago that the Board of Public Ed changed the rules for teacher certification. And this, it fits into that idea of lowering the bar without weakening that expected base. So they changed from a total of 60 units in a 5-year period, and you had to then take, I believe it was 15 quarter hours of college coursework as part of that. So that was the secondary requirement. But like I said, 5 or 6 years ago, the rules changed and now it is just 60 units in a 5-year period.
Right.
So that's something, and to me, it's not clear, like in the summary of the feedback that we have so far, we really didn't get any specific suggestions that 4 years was too little amount of time or too much of an amount of time. And really didn't get any clear feedback on the 60 units. I did have one person suggest that whatever the time period was, that the number of credits would be divisible by that number. So 6. Yeah, I mean, that might suggest a pacing, each year get this many credits. But I also just, want to say that I don't have a history or a clear understanding of why 60 in a 4-year period, other than comparing to kind of national guidelines and then what other states were doing back before the 90s when this program was really put in place. So other thoughts, and I know Tina, you are trucking along with us on iPad too, but just don't hesitate if there's something you can type into chat or something that you want to speak up with. Please know that I am not ignoring you.
I definitely see David's point in requiring a certain amount. I've loved it for the trustees just because those trustees who I wouldn't say they're uninterested, but they're a little slower to jump into it, and this has helped us as a group arrange those trainings and make sure it's easy for them so it doesn't feel like a burden as well. But I don't think the 4 years I think it's plenty of time. I am not one of those people that it's obsessive about getting my CE credits, but the state library and Web Junction and all those places are so good about giving us all these great resources that it makes it super easy. I was able to get mine in 2 years without beating myself up to get it done. So I think the 4 years is long enough, or I think it's plenty of time. I guess I think requiring credits, I'm not opposed to it. Some of my staff really drags their feet, and like I said before, our board requires everyone to be certified. So which again, I'm going to say I really like, because I think it's a great tool. It's great for staff to learn things that they really should know that, I don't necessarily have the time to teach them. And it's been great for some of my staff because they've stepped out into areas that they wouldn't have felt comfortable to before. So I think it's super beneficial. So that's my 2 cents on that. It seems like I had something else, but it's gone. So hopefully it'll come back.
Yeah, when that thread comes back, just pipe right up. Tina, were you going to say something? Okay, perfect. Oh, you're muted. Oh, we can't hear you. Sorry. There you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not sure that my board trustees have ever participated in any training. I know that I had 2 of them attend 2 weeks ago in Lewistown, but prior to that, were there, before, the new standards came out, were there certifications for the trustees prior?
So yeah, trustees there's always been a voluntary certification program for trustees. And I think Pam mentioned this and Dave too. The new public library standards is for a board as a whole to receive 3 hours of training each year. So it's not part of certification, that particular public library standard. But the voluntary trustee track has been in place since the beginning of the certification program. Okay, so I'm looking at time, it's 2:15 and we have, I want to make sure we have plenty of time to mull these things over. We're not at a decision point, we're not at a recommendation point. But if we were to, if you go with your gut at this moment, one of the proposals that I've gotten through talking with a few people is just to require, kind of like the teacher certification model, just to require 60 credits in 4 years, and to allow the individuals the flexibility to choose whatever credits in whatever categories they would want to have as a personal learning choice. So that's, what is your feeling about that? I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Like, if you had to vote right now, is that something that would be interesting or not? And what does that say about the kind of the foundations of what professional librarianship is?
I personally like it. However, I'm going to say having some of those, like, technology is something I always struggle to get enough credits in. I think most of us do. We're always down to collection management and technology. And I'm always like, oh, I wish I could just do administration because that's what I lean towards. However, I really learned a lot in a lot of those technology classes. So for me, I like the fact that I have to do them because I learn things I should know.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of letting people choose what's most relevant for them. But like Jennifer says, sometimes it's helpful to, I have to go find something about this, but maybe less credits than some of those unusual things if they're not really part of your job. It's like, because we talk about this at the state library, we don't do collection management, and yet we need to get those credits. So we're watching silly, webinars or podcasts or something that just take up time and really don't add to our job at all. So we just feel like that's a little irrelevant. So I kind of like the idea of letting people choose what's most relevant. I'm thinking maybe if you have a baseline, like your first certification should be a broad all those categories. So you get the basics of everything. And then when you go to be recertified, then pick the ones that are more relevant to you. That might be another way. I know that's another discussion for another day, but that might be something to keep in mind.
This is part of the reason the strategic track was developed for directors. My problem with the strategic one is I love that idea, but it's a lot of work to get it to do it, to set it up, I guess is what I'm saying. So I always look at all that and I'm like, oh, I'll just do the regular administrative track again because I don't have time to do this. So I guess that's my input there.
Yeah, and for everyone's benefit too, the strategic track, it is an option for certification. It's also called the personalized professional development plan. The data on that was implemented as a pilot a couple of years ago, and only one person completed that over the 3-year period since it was put in place. And that's part of where my thinking around complex, difficult, like really flexible means really difficult to actually implement and manage. And so that's why I'm really intrigued by the idea of looking at, overall number of credits, the 4-year period. Like that seems like, people are good with that, and that's pretty solid. But then with library administration category, I'm with you. I think everybody who's said this, who's done the library administration track, it's way easier to get those library admin track credits just because of the availability, but also, that's the stuff that we need for our jobs. And maybe the flexibility goes into just the rest, the balance are electives. with the recommendation to choose learning in the different categories, but I don't know if that helps, make things easier, more meaningful, and, less restrictions on people's personal choices for their learning plan.
And are we just talking about the just library administrator track right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think I like that idea if you have, you can just choose, but also then there is a recommendation, like maybe you do 10 in collection management and 10 in technology, but they're not required. So I don't know. I think that would be easier maybe to get the certification, because it does seem a lot of things that are, or at least that I see, end up either administration or library services to the public. Technology is incredibly hard to come by, I think. And the collection management and technical services, it's okay. I mean, if you do the book list things for readers advisory and stuff. Lately to me, it seemed like technology, I don't know why that is, but it seems harder to come by, to find something that might be applicable. So.
I just want to check in with Miranda too, and Dave and Robin, and see, see what your thoughts are on this too.
So I liked, similar to what Pam was saying, where you keep the credits they need in a library administration, and then their electives maybe have like 5 in those categories, and then the rest of that's wherever they want to put it.
I was leaning that way also. I think reducing your remoteness requirements, if you will, and allow them to hone into what they like, but still make them be familiar with general topics. And also, one of the people in the survey was also, as Pam had mentioned, differentiating between the initial and recertification requirements as far as that goes might be because people at a certain point know they're not going to be doing certain things, and to have them spend a lot of time on something they know they're not involved in might not be as advantageous.
I think that's really helpful. And as I kind of pull things together for our next conversations, and kind of make some proposals that we can maybe make a little bit more formal steps towards the recommendation, is to look at, I think we're fine with the total number of credits. We don't need to mess with the time period, but definitely making the greater flexibility in electives in the categories for administrators that are that really should be, more their choice, or, if there is direction from a board of trustees around where a director should, build their skills, or then that gives them more flexibility to work that way, in tandem with their board to build skills as well. Okay. Let's see here. Move a few things around. And some of these are just kind of informational things that I included just in case we needed to refer to them. The categories have been fairly stable, but like we've been talking about, the requirements in the CE program have been fairly stable in those areas. What was really different was the requirements and the mandate for directors to be certified Let's see here. Go here. Okay. So we are at the point where if we had public, we would have public comment actually. But since we don't, I just want to check in with our objectives, and we wanted to prioritize some topics and changes. I think we've landed on looking at the electives in particular and the categories outside of library administration. I do want to check in on your questions or other data that I might be able to bring to our discussion that will help kind of crystallize the recommendations when we get to that. Any thoughts or big questions that I can dig into some more and find a better way to display the information?
Colette, I haven't, as far as the areas that we might be able to help with as they pursue these, is there a list? I mean, I've used the Web Junction and the Vimo to get most of my credits from last year. Is there a way that we should to kind of guide people towards what we think is the best areas, depending on whatever track or different CE units you need, to give them a little more guidance? I don't know if there's a value in that or not, but it would be valuable to me as a trustee, I think, to have a little bit. I don't live it every day like most of you, and so to help funnel me towards the most appropriate sites would be helpful.
No, absolutely. I think that's part of, when we look at the overall goals of promoting the value of continuing education and promoting recognition in particular. The actionable part of those goals is that that there's a couple of things already in the works. One is that we almost have our contracts finalized to create our online learning platform, or to relaunch our online learning platform. That's something that's been on the back burner just because of contract delays. But that's going to be a primary place where we will house readily available online learning that's created by the state library staff and experts. And so that's going to be one tool that we have to help direct people based on their role or based on their topic interests to online learning. And then I've really taken to heart several comments and requests. And I've kind of titled these playlists in my mind. So a playlist for trustees that relates to library administration topics or budget topics or those sorts of things. And so as we clarify those goals, the goals, and kind of finish this work, that's kind of sets us in motion to then create those sorts of resources, all of the online learning, the playlists. And then I've also been working on transferring and adding information to a YouTube channel. So the Vimeo channel is kind of what's been historically used at the state library, and those things are still there. But I'm trying to put the really good stuff in one repository and make it more easily accessible than going here and there and everywhere. So those are things that are already in the works. And then they will just be kind of polished once we have our goals and the recommendations around the certification requirements.
As far as your additional data or feedback needed, and maybe you have this already, but I'd like to hear from library directors at those smaller libraries who don't even work full time. how do they feel about the 60 hours over the 4 years? Is that too much for them? Because, you know, sometimes they're not even working 20 hours in the smaller ones. And I just wonder, would it be easier? Could we make it more easy, convenient, relevant for them if they either had a longer time or a smaller number of hours required or something? I would just like to hear how they feel about the 60 hours in 4 years. Is that difficult for people in the smaller libraries that are sometimes not even half time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, Pam. I need to do some more individual, maybe one-on-one outreach with some of the small directors, or Jennifer or Miranda, if you have friends in surrounding counties or through the federations that you have a chance to visit with, especially about how certification impacts them. I'd love to kind of crowdsource some one-on-one conversations with those folks if we can. Okay. Well, I'm a big believer in when there is an awkward pause or a moment when things are really silent, it means that people are thinking big thoughts and they need more time to be able to kind of coalesce their thoughts and kind of process what we've talked about. So I would like to take that as a signal that next time yes, and Carmen, I believe it is a Monday. Thank you for that question. I didn't update that word on that slide from copy and pasting. But our next meeting is the 17th. We want to look more specifically at the trustee track requirements. I'll have resources to kind of frame that and some more data to look at relative to trustee track. But again, in the meantime, I'd like to invite you to think those thoughts, and if an email or a phone call is a way to kind of process and talk through some more of that, please do reach out to me, between now and our next meeting, which is on a Monday at 1:30. And let's see here. Yeah. But as we work things through, we'll just kind of let things take form, and this great group is going to help us kind of figure out how we want to decide and make the final recommendations as we get closer to our finish line towards the end of November. Does that seem like a relatively good thing to kind of do? Don't want to beat any dead horses or rehash anything when our brains are full. As always, the meeting recording and that will be posted to our event, and I'll do a follow-up email with that recording by the end of the day next Wednesday. The resources are posted, that recording link. And with that, please do be in touch. And again, I'll just open the floor if there are any final thoughts or comments, or just things that you've thought of as I've been babbling on. I would love to hear that.
Well, I had another question. I'm just I'm curious how the situation arises when we're experiencing a lot of growth here in Kalispell. I don't know how it is in most of the other towns. I imagine some of them, the smaller ones, are growing quickly too. How do we interact with the new standard with regard to under 25,000 versus over 25,000? If a director is at a location under 25,000 and then they become over that, how do we, and they don't have a master's in library science, how is, I haven't, not sure how that pathway works. So I would be curious to hear how that would be handled with the current director that they have, which the community may be very happy with, and you pop over that number. How do we manage that? I was just because I don't have an answer for that, so I was just curious if that's happened and how that's addressed.
I was going to say, Pam, I don't know if you have any insights that, because that's part of the administrative rules and not the CE requirements.
Right. And that is an interesting question. And I don't know that it has occurred, but I could definitely see how it could. I'm thinking that, I don't want to say grandfathered in, but if you've already had a person in there and your population was smaller, if all of a sudden your population has become bigger, then perhaps that would be a requirement, but they would have 4 years to get that degree if they needed to. I honestly don't know. That is a really interesting question. Might have to elevate that question to people who might have a better answer than me, because I really don't know.
Yeah, I think that might be something that we haven't really faced before. And it's, yeah, so why don't we say Pam and I will elevate that question and see what we can find out. I love a question that I have no idea how to answer, because that gives me homework.
That wasn't my intent, but I was just curious. I mean, obviously, we in here in Kalispell, people probably know we have a non-certified director, and obviously we're over 25,000. But I was just, that question in the new standard just popped into my head. It says, well, how does this get handled in a different situation?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and certainly something to kind of keep in mind, because I could see that happening at some point somewhere along the way. So it's good to, raise it and so we can be a little proactive and think about it and have a response to that. So excellent question, I think.
Oh, okay, well, thank you for your time this afternoon. I look forward to visiting again on the Monday, the 17th. And just be in touch over the interim. I am going to be out of the office until next Tuesday, between the weekend and some other things I need to attend to, but I will be checking email and look forward to hearing from you and for our continued discussion. It's great to have all of these minds together, and at the end of our journey, we're going to come up with something great. I have way too many screens and I can't